Last week, House Speaker John Boehner broke ranks with his conservative wing and pushed through a bipartisan budget bill really without their support. So it does raise the question of whether other bipartisan legislation could get through. And that one of the key ones there is it possible that we could actually get comprehensive immigration reform through in the near term? Now, this is a live question. It's not obvious answer. And in fact, the strategy of what to do around that is not at all clear. And so what we've actually done here today is we've really gathered an all-star group. We're basically pulling them together in the heat of the moment for a kind of working strategy session to really talk openly and insightfully about what can really be done here.
We have this window at the beginning of next year where business will still be conducted. Let's call it from the State of the Union through May, maybe June. And then we run into congressional elections. So the beginning of next year or the beginning of 2015. But now what happens in 2015? In 2015, now we're caught in presidential politics, the very beginning of presidential politics, compounding everything. You get into the last 2 years of an administration. You get into a new Congress, which means we're going to have to start over with a new bill. How are we going to get the attention of the American people and their leaders, in particular Republican leaders, who have to think that this is an issue they've got to get squared away before the presidential election cycle begins? How do we get attention focused so that we can begin that dialogue, so we can begin to capture hearts and minds?
Right now, the Republicans in the House are as low as they've been in the last 40 years of American politics. They need to change the dynamic. They need to make things better and different for them if they're going to have the kind of election that they want. What you're seeing now, I think, is a much more pragmatic approach for the Republicans in the House. They've passed 5 different bills out of committee. We are closer today for the two parties to come together, and the House Republicans have moved much further than they ever have.
Last week I met with several folks on the Republican side, and behind closed doors, they're there. Their hearts and mind are there, and we have to figure out how do we give them the political courage to go out and front and really fill a vacuum that is missing right now within the leadership of the Republican Party.
I feel like once we get to the place where this is more of a conversation within popular culture, then we're at a place where they're talking about it, they see that we need to reach a solution, and that extreme right becomes more and more marginalized.
I really thank Ali for bringing up the point that, pop culture and trying to engage people in a mainstream level is incredibly important to this fight. Like Will and Grace, in many ways, is like the defining pop culture moment for the gay rights movement, because it told us that it wasn't just about Will, it was about Grace. That for every gay person, there was the, straight roommate, straight sister, straight coworker, straight, friend who advocates for people like us.
I would completely agree with Jose on this. We found that the conversation that folks who would identify as quote liberal is very similar to the conversation that conservatives will have, and it's one about people, it's one about neighbors, it's one about families. And I've believed for years that anytime we talk about immigration policy, we actually lose the debate. When we actually talk about immigration as people, then we're winning the debate.
We cannot give up, and we have to move on all of these fronts, whether they be legislative, grassroots, communications, efforts to find pop culture and integrate that need into everything people in this country see, touch, and feel, because there is a human dimension that will ultimately carry this forward.
We've got to strike right now. This is a very important moment.
If we can mobilize these groups in the next 5 to 10 weeks and make those arguments powerfully, then when we find ourselves in late January and early February, we'll have the groundwork laid for the possibility of a spring deal. And if we miss this window, we're talking about a year. We're talking about 2 years. We're talking about maybe another administration. We have to take advantage of these next 5 to 10 weeks, and it has to be a conversation that is rooted in these Republican questions of economic growth, of religious values and religious communities, of pragmatic politics.